Hello everyone, welcome to Earth Archives. Today we're going to talk about a very interesting and historically rich brand, Coca-Cola. Many people know that Coca-Cola is one of the largest soft drink companies in the world. But did you know that it has deep ties to World War II? Today, we'll uncover this history and explore how this iconic brand transformed from a beverage into a source of morale for soldiers during the war, and even became a player in political maneuvers around the world. Coca-Cola, before World War II. When it comes to Coca-Cola, the soda that represents the American dream, it's not just a post-World War II global phenomenon. It had already started its global domination long before the war. Picture this. The 1930s, the world hadn't completely fallen into chaos yet, and Coca-Cola was boldly marching into countries far and wide, with factories popping up everywhere. Yes, even Germany was no exception. You might find that a bit strange, considering the later intense conflicts of World War II, but before the war broke out, the Germans were absolutely smitten with this sweet American soda. Back then, Coca-Cola was thriving in Germany. Records from 1939 show that there were already 43 factories and over 600 distributors across the country, spreading like wildfire. People on the streets were happily sipping from glass bottles, bubbles fizzing at the top, their faces lighting up with smiles like they were enjoying ice pops on a hot summer day. Coca-Cola had truly become a German favorite. But, as we all know, good times don't last forever. Once the war began, things took a turn for the worse. Trade embargoes slammed down like an iron gate, cutting off Coca-Cola from its German subsidiary. The American headquarters was scrambling, but nothing could get through. The factories in Germany were left helpless, unable to import ingredients. Even worse, the war choked off access to sugar, which, as you might know, was absolutely essential for making Coca-Cola. Without sugar, how could they make soda? Imagine the workers standing in empty warehouses, sugar bins turned upside down, with nothing sweet to produce. The machines hummed, but there was no way to start production. The Germans were still craving Coca-Cola, but where would the ingredients come from? The factory owners were pulling their hair out in frustration. Under such circumstances, producing Coca-Cola became an impossible task. The once bustling production lines stood silent, and the distributors could only stare at empty bottles, sighing. The sweet times were gone, reduced to nothing but memories. Coca-Cola, in pre-World War II Germany, was a short but glorious little chapter. From 43 factories to over 600 distributors, the Germans were drinking it up with joy. But once the war hit, sugar ran out, trade was cut off, and this sweet venture had to hit the pause button. Who would have thought that behind a bottle of soda there was so much history, how it went from the US to Germany, only to be choked by the flames of war? It's a story that's both sweet and a little bitter. Germany's homemade substitute, Fanta. World War II pushed Coca-Cola, in Germany, to the brink. With no sugar and no ingredients, the Germans were staring at empty bottles. But they couldn't just say goodbye to their beloved soda. Faced with this predicament, they decided not to give up and instead get creative. So Max, the head of Coca-Cola's German division, stepped up and confidently declared, "No sugar? We'll just make something new ourselves." And that's how they came up with what would later become the world-famous Fanta. Imagine the scene. A group of people in the factory gathered around a table, piled high with apple pomace, whey, and other miscellaneous food byproducts. Max, looking serious, stirred this odd mixture, and somehow managed to create a drinkable beverage. The recipe sounds wild. Apple pomace left over from juice extraction, and whey, a byproduct from cheese making. But somehow, they managed to turn it into a drink that became a lifesaver during the war. The name Fanta is quite interesting too. It's said to come from a German word meaning fantasy, carrying a bit of hope with it. Just hearing the name, you can almost feel like this drink was adding a little light to those gloomy days. In 1941, this quirky soda officially hit the market. When it was first introduced, the insiders even called it the holy vegetable among vegetables, which sounds like quite the overstatement. But when Germans took a sip, they actually liked it. Sweet, sour, with bubbles popping up. it quickly became a hit across the country. Imagine the streets of wartime Germany, still tinged with the smell of smoke from the battlefield. People lined up to buy Fanta, drinking it down like it was a little sip of happiness in the midst of the chaos. But Fanta didn't just quench thirst. With sugar so scarce, the Germans got creative and started using it as a universal seasoning. Some people poured Fanta into soups for extra flavor, while others stirred it into stews. The pot would bubble away, releasing a fruity aroma into the air. It was a brilliant move, turning soda into a versatile kitchen ingredient. The birth of Fanta was truly a historical twist of fate. While the war had left Coca-Cola in Germany with no options, the Germans didn't give up. Max, along with his team, took a bunch of leftover byproducts and somehow turned them into a new drink. Not only did it save their market, but it also brought a bit of sweetness to the people. It wasn't just a soda. It was a symbol of the wartime resilience and determination. Hope was brewed from apple pomace and whey. Fanta, from being a factory experiment to a lifesaver for the German people, sweetened its way through the war, and it truly was something special. The next time you're talking about drinks, don't forget to mention this wartime oddity. From a sugar shortage to nationwide love, one bottle of soda managed to write its own legend. Fanta's international expansion. Fanta quickly became popular not only in Germany, but also in Nazi-occupied Netherlands, where production began. Due to the differing resources in each country, the formula for Fanta varied between the two. The Dutch version even included a more premium ingredient, woodruff, which made the drink taste more refined. However, this version of Fanta didn't last. The Fanta we enjoy today is completely different from the wartime formula. In fact, the current version of Fanta was developed in 1955 in Naples, Italy. In 1960, Coca-Cola acquired Fanta and incorporated it into their brand. Despite this, Coca-Cola didn't initially invest much in Fanta or promote it heavily, as its positioning somewhat conflicted with Coca-Cola's flagship product. The impact of war and the market. Fanta, the little wartime soda, really owes a lot to Coca-Cola's favoritism back in the day. World War II cut off Coca-Cola's ingredient supply to Germany, and with the American headquarters far away and unable to help, the German division had to fend for itself, creating Fanta from apple pomace and whey. But think about it, this kind of hands-off treatment actually gave Fanta the freedom to evolve on its own. After the war, Coca-Cola was focused on global expansion, and Fanta, left somewhat neglected, was able to roam free like a wild child, developing its own unique character. Imagine the Fanta R&D team sitting around, watching Coca-Cola's immense success, and thinking to themselves, why not try some new flavors? And so, Fanta began its bold flavor adventures. From its single wartime formula, it has now expanded to over 200 billion possible flavor combinations, breaking free from the shadow of Coca-Cola and truly becoming its own brand. Fanta is truly a clever drink that knows how to adapt. In different countries, it changes its disguise, adjusting its flavor to fit local tastes. For example, in the UK, to avoid taxes, they cut the sugar down to nearly nothing, making it taste refreshingly like fruit juice. Brits, holding their cups, find this low-sugar version quite to their liking. But in the US, Fanta sticks with its usual high-sugar corn syrup formula, sweet enough to be overwhelming, and Americans happily gulp it down, saying, now this is what soda should taste like. In Eastern and Northern Europe, Fanta really gets creative, releasing some bizarrely colored juice versions, greenish, purplish, looking almost like a painter's palette. Locals, sipping away, get a kick out of it, saying the colors are a real thrill. Imagine walking down a supermarket aisle, with Fanta bottles in every color of the rainbow, neatly lined up. The Brits grab the low-sugar ones, Americans rush for the high-sugar versions, and Eastern Europeans happily pick up the purple bottles. Each market is happily charmed by Fanta's playful variety. Fanta's development journey is a true case of unintended success. From being the neglected wartime drink, it accidentally turned into the king of variety. While Coca-Cola was busy playing global Big Brother, Fanta took the opportunity to flourish, offering a range of flavors like it was throwing a party. If you wanted sweet, it gave you sweet. If you wanted sour, it gave you sour. Any need met. It wasn't just a soda. It became a chameleon of cultures, adapting to local tastes everywhere. With its clever adaptability, Fanta transformed from a wartime emergency drink in Germany into a hot commodity on the global market. Coca-Cola and the U.S. military, the combat beverage in war. During World War II, Coca-Cola didn't shy away from the chaos of war. In fact, it played an even bolder game, pushing forward with its global expansion. At that time, the U.S. military was one of its biggest customers, with soldiers fighting fiercely on the front lines. Who wouldn't want a cold soda to refresh themselves? Coca-Cola saw this as a huge opportunity. Former President Robert Woodruff slammed his fist on the table and declared, "Wherever they are, no matter the situation, our soldiers will get Coca-Cola." This wasn't just an empty promise. When he made this statement in 1949, he had already laid out the plan. Imagine this. Amidst the sound of gunfire and smoke on the battlefield, soldiers sweating and carrying their rifles, and suddenly someone hands them a bottle of Coke. They gulp it down, the bubbles fizzing at the edge of their mouths, and just like that, they feel like they could fight for another 500 years. The morale boost was truly incredible. To get this sweet, fizzy drink to the front lines, Coca-Cola really went all in. In the scorching deserts of North Africa, where the heat was like an oven, they built factories right in the sand dunes. In the jungles of the Pacific, swarming with bugs, they still hauled in the machinery. Even in the trenches at the front, you could spot a Coca-Cola sign swinging in the breeze. These battlefield factories weren't just makeshift operations. They solved the transportation issues and ensured that the taste of Coca-Cola never changed. Imagine it. Workers toiling under the blazing sun, drenched in sweat, stirring syrup while machines hummed nonstop. Bottles filled one after another, and cold Coca-Cola flowed down the assembly line, directly into the hands of the soldiers. The scene must have been incredible. Soldiers in the desert sipping Coke, brothers in the jungle munching on rations, while washing them down with Coca-Cola. And as soon as the gunfire paused, someone would shout, "Coke's here." This wasn't just a thirst quencher. It became a mental lifeline on the battlefield. During the war, Coca-Cola's production skyrocketed like it was on a rocket ship, with factories running at full capacity as the norm. In North Africa, where the sandstorms blew into the machines, workers would just wipe them down and keep going. In the Pacific, the humidity made the bottles sticky, but they still packed and shipped them out. These factories managed to get Coke to every corner of the battlefield, and as the soldiers drank it, they felt like even the toughest parts of the war had a little sweetness to get them through. Coca-Cola wasn't just running a great business. It became a part of the U.S. military's morale. The battlefield itself even turned into a stage for Coca-Cola's brand. Coca-Cola's special relationship, politics, and branding. Coca-Cola's success during World War II wasn't just a stroke of luck. It had the strong backing of the U.S. government and military. Even before the war fully erupted, President Franklin D. Roosevelt saw the potential in this sweet soda. He believed it could not only quench thirst, but also boost morale. So he gave the green light to Coca-Cola's global expansion plan. Imagine Roosevelt sitting at his desk in the White House, a bottle of Coke at his side, taking a sip and nodding as he said, "This needs to be pushed out there. Let the whole world taste it." With the president's endorsement, Coca-Cola kept its factories running during the war and even expanded to locations around the globe. The political support wasn't just talk. It covered everything from raw material shipments to setting up factories in war zones, ensuring that this soda became the American calling card on the battlefield, sweetening the mouths of soldiers and making its way into global markets. What's even more interesting is that the connection between Roosevelt and Coca-Cola goes back to his father's generation. During the Spanish-American War in 1898, Roosevelt's father, Theodore Roosevelt Sr., had already linked up with Coca-Cola. Back then, during a break in the fighting, he walked into a bar, ordered a Coca-Cola, and after taking a sip of the cold soda with bubbles rising at the edge of his mouth, He squinted and said, "This is the taste of freedom." What a moment that must have been amidst the smoke and flames of war. A simple glass of Coke gave a taste of the American dream. It's said that this first sip became a unique bond between the Roosevelt family and Coca-Cola. By the time Franklin Roosevelt came around, the family tradition, combined with government support, helped elevate this taste of freedom to new heights. Imagine Roosevelt sitting in the White House discussing the war with a bottle of Coca-Cola at his side. He might have even laughed with his staff, saying, "My dad loved this taste, and now it's my turn to push it." Coca-Cola's World War II strategy really thrived thanks to the Roosevelt family's connection and the government's favor. From that first glass on the battlefield with Theodore Roosevelt Sr. to Franklin Roosevelt's global push, this soda didn't just sweeten the soldiers' mouths. It sweetened its place in history. The battlefield factories hummed away. Soldiers sipped Coca-Cola while heading into battle, all backed by the full support of the government and the legacy of the Roosevelt family. Coca-Cola's cultural impact during World War II. As World War II dragged on, the soldiers on the front lines were under immense pressure, as if they were carrying a mountain on their backs. The artillery was deafening, and life was as tough as chewing on dry bread. But Coca-Cola wasn't sitting idle. It was not only busy delivering sodas to the battlefield, but also finding ways to lift the spirits of the soldiers. One of their creative moves was launching a magazine called The Red Barrel, packed with news, short stories, and illustrations, essentially a battlefield version of a distraction tool. Imagine this: soldiers, covered in mud, sitting by sandbags flipping through this little booklet. Inside, they'd find battlefield anecdotes, funny comics with soldiers drinking Coke, and occasionally even updates from home. As they turned the pages, their lips would curl up into a smile. The magazine wasn't thick, but it was heavy in impact. As soldiers gulped down Coca-Cola and flipped through the Red Barrel, it was like a brief escape from the smoke and chaos of war, giving them a moment of sweetness and relief. Coca-Cola really nailed it with this move, embedding its brand deep in the hearts of soldiers, sweet in their mouths and warm in their hearts. What's even more interesting is that Coca-Cola played the role of a diplomatic pro during World War II, and even Soviet Marshal Zhukov wasn't immune to its charm. It's said that this battle-hardened hero had a secret love for Coca-Cola, but there was a problem. Anti-capitalist sentiment was running high in the Soviet Union, and if word got out that he was drinking American goods, it would be pretty embarrassing. So Coca-Cola got creative and created a special invisible version for him, transparent, with none of that iconic caramel color, making it look just like vodka. Imagine Zhukov sitting in his command post, sipping from a cup, and people around him thinking he's drinking hard liquor, only to discover it's actually sweet Coca-Cola. This special edition didn't alter the taste, but it was as discreet as a spy. Zhukov could enjoy his Coke without worrying about being accused of being a capitalist lackey. This move was brilliant. Coca-Cola managed to sneak its way into the Soviet high ranks, and, in a way, pulled off some cross-camp diplomacy right before the Cold War fully kicked off. Coca-Cola's story during World War II is truly a sweet and dynamic one. From the Red Barrel magazine, making soldiers smile, to the transparent Coke, keeping Zhukov's secret indulgence. It wasn't just soda. It became a morale booster on the battlefield and a diplomatic lubricant in the political arena. So next time you talk about Coca-Cola, don't forget to mention this battlefield legend. From the front lines to the marshal's office, one bottle of soda ended up leaving a sweet mark on global influence. Coca-Cola, from war to globalization. When the smoke of World War II cleared, Coca-Cola had no intention of resting. It was like a marathon runner who, after catching their breath, immediately starts sprinting toward the global market. The world was left in ruins after the war, but this sweet soda powered its way into the Americas, Europe, and Asia, with its silver-white logo popping up everywhere. Imagine this: kids on the streets of America sipping from glass bottles, wealthy women in European cafes chatting over Coca-Cola, and street vendors in Asian night markets pairing it with grilled skewers. What a lively scene! Coca-Cola became more than just a beverage. It essentially became the ambassador of American culture. As the bubbles fizzed, the American dream floated right alongside it. Riding the wave of globalization, Coca-Cola spread wherever there was a market, moving from the battlefield to everyday life. It transformed itself into an international symbol, sweetening hearts across the globe. Looking back at Coca-Cola's history, it's incredible how a single soda transformed into a global legend. During World War II, it sweetened the soldiers' spirits with factories on the front lines and the Red Barrel magazine, and even supplied Zhukov with a special transparent version. Soviet bigwigs weren't immune to its charm. Once the war ended, Coca-Cola didn't slow down. Instead, it leveraged America's influence to race around the globe. Fanta, its little sibling, didn't sit idle either. Originally a wartime emergency drink made from apple scraps in Germany, it transformed into a chameleon with over 200 flavors, low sugar, high sugar, you name it, thanks to its wartime free-range growth. Imagine this. On supermarket shelves after the war, Coca-Cola and Fanta stood side by side, one classic and unchanging, the other a colorful, ever-evolving creation. Consumers picked up their bottles with smiles, while behind the scenes, the companies were figuring out how to dominate the market even further. The stories of these two drinks are like a textbook on how businesses can adapt to chaotic times, taking brand value and cultural influence to the highest level. Coca-Cola's journey, from its 43 factories in pre-war Germany to wartime battlefield expansions, and then to its post-war rise as a global powerhouse, has been nothing short of sweet and strategic. It's not just a symbol of American culture, it's become a mirror of globalization. Wherever there's Coke, there's a reflection of modern life. Today, as you sip your Coke, munch on a burger, and maybe even order takeout, you're experiencing the consumer culture wave it helped create. So, next time you talk about drinks, don't forget to mention this globalization sweetheart. From the trials of World War II to sweeping the world, Coca-Cola turned a simple soda into a cultural legend. Sounds like a great wrap-up. If this were a video, I'd definitely be giving it a thumbs up. Feel free to hit me up anytime if you want to chat about more history or anything else.